Okay. Okay. So I set the broadcast. I set the broadcast to go live at 10:30 because I expected things to at least run till 10. But it is 9:32, and the 2020 Money in the Bank just ended.
We're live. Welcome for our special edition of the Two Bros Wrestling Show.
What's up, everybody?
I'm Kevin.
I'm Doug.
And that was a pay-per-view, maybe?
I'm sorry, I can't stop laughing.
I'm not sure exactly what it is we saw, Doug, but like you, I was expecting that we would have another hour at least of pay-per-view entertainment. I could go through the matches pretty fast if you wanted to save most of our time to talk about that main event.
Yes, we should totally do that. Let me pull up some notes.
Like half of my notes are on that main event.
Okay. So, first off, I do want to say kudos to both WWE and AEW for not opening their shows up to fans this week, even though they could have, and they could have filled both the Performance Center and Daly's Place with up to 25% capacity. Kudos to both of them for not letting fans in, because I still think we're not ready for that nationwide. But that's my 2 cents on that. Now let's get into this pay-per-view, Kevin.
Yes, sir. Match 1. We had the tag team champs, New Day, Miz Morrison, Forgotten Sons, and Lucha House Party. You and I both called this one correct, and so I think correct decision. New Day won. You got anything you want to say about the Fatal 4-Way?
You know, I think it was a standard multi-team tag match. New Day retains. There was nothing really special here for me.
I like the Morrison top rope Spanish fly move to the outside. I think that might have been the spot of the night. Other than that, it was frantic. It was fine. I don't think that it's anything that anyone's going to be talking about or remember, a month from now. But for its place on the card, I thought it was an okay opener.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Next, we had unadvertised, out of nowhere, Lashley versus Truth match, which was basically a Raw match on television, a squash match essentially. Lashley obviously winning.
Yeah, I've got a lot of that here. I mean, my notes say R-Truth versus MVP. No, wait, Lashley. What is this? Lashley wins. So far, this is not this is a TV produced event. It wasn't pay-per-view level. I even thought that about the first match too. We were getting a lot of TV matches, I thought, tonight.
That one, yeah, that was a straight up job by Truth there. So really nothing to see here. And also, even if it wasn't, even if it was a competitive match that was a sleeper and stole the show, which it didn't. But even if it had been, I am not a fan of unannounced matches, pay-per-views, or those special events you build to. If you don't have enough time in it to, at least announce it on Twitter the day ahead, why bother? Just don't waste my time with that.
Right. But I mean, it's 9:30 on a Sunday night on a pay-per-view night, and it's over. And the pay-per-view was over before 9:30. So,
which actually, I am actually fine if you had quality matches that you'd hyped up and everything. The fact that they end early, I mean, WrestleMania over 2 nights instead of a 7-hour slog on one day was great. The second pay-per-view in this new pandemic era, wrapping up in 2.5 hours, I'm fine for that too. A tight 2.5 hours. There's so much wrestling on TV. A tight 2.5 hours that was well booked and well performed would be fine.
I agree, but I think I've just been conditioned by WWE to expect my pay-per-views to go past 11.
They could have, instead of 2.5 hours, they could have given us 2 hours and 25 minutes, and they cut out that Lashley Truth nonsense. Save this an extra 5.
All the nonsense was, oh my goodness. So what do we have next? Oh yeah, the SmackDown Women's Championship. I thought this again was another TV match.
I mean, it's one that we also called correctly because, like we talked about, Tamina has not been built up to be a legitimate threat. And something I didn't know, Doug, when we talked about this, when we previewed it, but do you have any recollection? Do you remember Tamina debuting? How
With
she
the
debuted?
Usos, right?
With the Usos.
Yes,
With the Usos. So other than Natty, Tamina is the longest serving member of the female roster. She's been there 10 years now. Would you have thought that the other day when we were talking?
I would not, but as soon as you say that, I distinctly remember her debut because both Jimmy J and her all hit like your frog splashes off the
Yes.
top rope. But yeah, I
Until
remember
I was watching a preview earlier this week, I forgot that completely. The fact the lady has been here 10 years and has no gold to show for it and no real push to show for it. I mean, I have nothing against her. In fact, if she would, it would have been a great story after 10 years had they built this up with a couple months worth of building her into a legitimate challenger and her taking the belt. As it was, like you said, a match that seemed kind of 2 weeks maybe of a build up to it. And I mean, she showed some great fire at first. I love the counter to the super kick where Bayley trapped the leg into the knee lock. But outside of that, again, like most of these matches, nothing inherently wrong with them. Nothing that anyone's going to be talking about next week.
I agree. I enjoyed the Bayley and Sasha celebration post match more than I did the match.
I'm kind of with you there. The two of them together are great, and so when that ultimately breaks down, that's going to be where you have Bayley in a money match. Until then, it's just placeholders and folks that are not being built up to be legitimate threats. So it was fine.
It was, and yeah, I do want to say, I think everything on this card up to a certain point were TV level for me, and not they were fine, but I didn't see anything really pay per view jumping out at me. I do have some.
Go
this Bray versus Braun, and
Universal Championship.
What's that?
We called it wrong. We called it wrong. This one we missed.
We called it wrong, but I think we both called Fiend. We called Fiend over Braun, and I think I even put in my notes here: Bray versus Braun. Is this how Braun wins? No Fiend. And that's how you protect the Fiend by not having him actually in this match, and you put Bray over, or you put Braun over Bray, not the Fiend.
This also, I would like to point out, and you probably noticed, or maybe you didn't either, because it was kind of subtle. This match, the live watermark in the corner was not on the screen. So with the puppetry and all that, right. I believe that this was a pre-tape contest, which was, I mean, I did like the whole Bray looking at Braun at one point and going, "You are strong." I don't know why that cracked me up. Other than that, there was, the shenanigans with the goat mask or sheep mask, and
yeah,
the less said maybe about that, probably the better. Again, I like both guys as characters. I don't know that in ring you're going to get a great contest between the two of them. But like you said, that wasn't the Fiend, so that is some bit of protection, but it does maybe go against us thinking that they're going to use Braun as a transitional champion.
I agree. I did totally refer to him as a transitional champion on our preview show, and I really expected the Fiend to go over here, but the Fiend was nowhere to be found. But I don't. This story's just getting started now. I mean, and I like it because it did advance the storytelling on this. I'm hoping that the WWE follows up on this and advances the storytelling.
When I saw that they were going into the Universal title match barely an hour into the show is when I thought there's not going to be a title change after all, because they wouldn't position it here if they were going to, go to a title change.
Right.
So, then straight into our WWE Championship match, which to me, I mean, it by default was the match of the night. Drew won as he should, and we called it correctly. I did love the combo that Seth hit at one point of the suplex into the rolling suplex into the Falcon Arrow. That was sweet. I liked the leg work. I loved it when McIntyre reached back up onto the top rope, flipped Seth off. Seth went down on his face. That was a brutal spot.
I totally popped for that. I was like, whoa.
And I mean, it was a good match. I'd say it was. I think they have better in them. It wasn't really like a 5-star contest, but just by default, it was the match of the night. I thought the handshake at the end was interesting. Although one thing I'll call out is we're going to have a new champion. I hate that.
I do too. Anytime they hear that, no, we're not.
It's always bad, but it's sometimes easy to just kind of drown out the commentary. But in this pandemic era, commentary is more important than ever when you don't have the crowd noise to compete, where you can kind of drown out sometimes some of the commentary if it gets to be bad. And there were 4 or 5 times tonight, we're going to have a new champion. This is it. And then you're like instantly, no, it's not. You just spoiled the ending.
Yeah.
It could have been it. There was a couple of that were like, oh, this is it, until they announced that it's it, and you know that it's not. It's bad anytime. It's doubly bad when there's no audience and you're just concentrating on what the guys are saying. But kudos to Drew and Seth. I hope that this is chapter 1 in this too, because I do think that they have better in them, even though this was good.
And a quick note on commentary too. I think Joe just was killing it on commentary tonight.
Joe, yeah, I love Joe in the ring, but considering his health history and his age, the days of the Samoan submission machine, me hoping that this indie darling, Ring of Honor superstar, TNA stalwart, finally gets a big time role as a champion, top level guy in WWE that's probably passed. So if you're not going to go that way with him and give him some sort of legacy push, Joe on commentary is kind of like Taz on commentary in AEW. Mm-hmm. There's something similar about those characters, as they're totally believable, tough guys that know their submission wrestling and know the psychology and call it like a real sport. And that I love. And yeah, you're absolutely spot on to point out that Joe is a great addition to the announce team.
But
and then there was whatever in the world that was that we just watched. It multi-participant. You were correct. It was going on at the same time. So apparently some things we've learned. Okay. Apparently the Undertaker, we now know the source of his power. He is a vampire that lives in an office at WWE headquarters, where he apparently sleeps in a casket. Paul Heyman, for some reason, takes all of his meals at WWE headquarters.
What a meal!
And he's a big guy. And apparently WWE executives Bruce Pritchard and John Laurinaitis hang out at WWE headquarters in character, their old characters, as we got a Brother Love cameo and a Johnny Ace cameo and even a Doink cameo, even though it wasn't Matt Bourne. It was obviously a very young, that's not really Doink for some ungodly reason. Doug, where do you begin with what this was?
Well, first off, one very important thing in my notes that I don't think are in your notes is, of course, Vince has a T-Rex skull in his office. Of course,
I have actually seen that before, Doug. It's truthfully, I've seen pictures of him in his office before. That wasn't a gimmick for a laugh in this match. The dude really has that in it.
Of course he does. I mean, he's Vince McMahon.
Of course, also, I guess we are to believe that Vince McMahon doesn't actually watch his own pay-per-views while they're on. He didn't even have a screen on. He's in there taking notes on a legal pad. I'm like, Vince, I thought you were always back there yelling at the announcers while you're watching the show. Apparently, all those rumors these years, the dude's just hanging out in Stanford, jotting down note, playing Hangman or something on his legal pad. I don't know what he's doing.
So,
yeah. Well, okay. We can go through this chronologically if you want to do it tackle it that way from some of my notes. So they copied the spot where they smashed the mirror in the gym. Yes. That routine they did like last month at the Performance Center with was it the Johnny match?
There was Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. Yes.
So they did that, and then there was also the lapse of logic, and please, you can laugh at me if you wish that I'm trying to apply logic to this, but you have to get to the roof. Why did people jump in the elevator and then get off the elevator? Just hit the top floor. Just go all the way up. You're already there.
Also, on that note, I have a very specific note. Why doesn't Dana know the briefcase is on the roof? Why did the girl not know this?
Well, in Dana's defense, I was also apparently confused by the rules. You had to explain to me it was happening all at once. Perhaps they didn't explain it to her very well either. She saw a briefcase hanging from the ceiling and thought it must be it. Again, in her defense, I, worked in office buildings much of my career and have yet to find a briefcase hanging from the ceiling. So I can see where you would be confused.
Okay, fair enough.
Oh, man. And then how did AJ get out from underneath that barbell that Oda set on him? We never saw that either. Dude's trapped under a barbell, totally helpless. Thinks little Ray is going to be able to deadlift that off of him. But he somehow escaped. We don't know how.
That and also, we go from seeing Nia Jax completely knocked out, drooling on the floor, to up and ready for a food fight, like in the next jump cut.
Do you think that Vince is the one that books all these food fights? Like, how many WWE food fights have there been through the years?
I don't I don't know.
I mean, at that point, I'm thinking to myself, this isn't wrestling, Sally. I mean, it was totally done for comedy, except the only way it was funny is where it was so bad at times that it was kind of, maybe was they trying to go for that to make it funny, or was that unintentionally funny? I can sometimes have a hard time telling. And again, I know I'm trying to apply logic to this, just like, why don't you just take the elevator up to the top floor? But
I thought Asuka was going to do that. I was like, okay, she takes everybody out, she jumps on the elevator. She's got, and the girls just got dancing in the elevator. Of course, maybe that was her plan, but then the guys, maybe that was Asuka's plan to go straight to the top, but the guys tried to get an elevator too, so the elevator had to stop on that floor. I don't know.
And then we never really saw anyone get to the roof. Just suddenly people started appearing on the roof. And apparently the men are much faster than the women. And some participants, like, your Dana Brooks and like your Shaynas, and like at some point they disappeared altogether.
Yeah.
Like, did they get lost?
Carmella never made it to the roof either.
Yeah. Most of the men made it to the roof. And then some of the women were like, I don't know if they had already gone home or they shot on different days or what, but it's like, why didn't everybody make it to the roof? Is it that hard to find the top floor of WWE headquarters? It's like a labyrinth, apparently.
Maybe all the girls did not get the get the full rules, and just like Dana, maybe Dana won, we're done.
Oh yeah, they saw Dana celebrating with the briefcase in the conference room and decided the match was over, so they went home. But other than those that disappeared, the women apparently are faster than the men because all the women show up. And at this point, you have a standard looking match. And I will say it looks cool up there. The way that if you could have just had a standard ladder match on the roof, I think it would have been better than what they ended up doing.
I don't know. I can't stop laughing about. I've had a smile on my face since the thing started, just because
maybe it worked, Doug. Maybe that's what you were supposed to feel. You're entertained.
I will say I was incredibly entertained. I'm still trying to figure out if it was good, if it was bad, or if it was so bad it circled back around like Plan 9 style and became good. I don't know right now what I just watched.
Well, again, here I am trying to analyze in a sports manner, which is what I love about wrestling, is when it's more sports-like instead of over the top comedy. But much like they didn't take the elevator to the top, why did Baron Corbin try to stop Asuka? Like, there's two briefcases. There's men. At that point, it'd be like, hey, it's just the two of us. Here's yours. Here's mine. We both win. Why is he fighting with Asuka?
That's what I'm yelling at my TV going, what are you doing? Although, I will say, drop my glasses. I will say, I'm glad he did decide to fight with Asuka, because anytime I can see Corbin get kicked in the face and fall off a ladder, I'm there for it. Male, female, I really don't care who's doing it to her.
And one, I'm going to call you sick for laughing at this, because at the very least, I think there should be a moment of silence, because one of my favorite wrestlers, Aleister Black, apparently died tonight.
So did Little Ray.
Thrown right off of a skyscraper. I mean, don't we think we should have a moment of silence for the two men who gave their lives for this bit of hot garbage that we watched this evening?
And Black was my favorite to win. Because I was like, if Jinder Mahal isn't the like mystery guy, then I'm calling it for Black.
Oh yeah, hey Peggy, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you just got through watching this bit of nonsense that we're talking about here. But and what do you think? I mean, I'm happy that Asuka. I guess that we should say Asuka was the female winner, which I am fine with, even though neither of us guessed it. And then Otis won for the men. I don't get that at all.
Okay, I in all honesty here, and I will admit this, that I straight up popped for that. I came up off the couch cheering and laughing hysterically, and I don't know why.
At this point, I wish we could go back and actually pull in our commentary from last week when we previewed this, because I don't know if it was you, I, or us in agreement going, well, we know for sure the one person who doesn't have a shot at winning this is Otis. And
then, they kind of telegraphed it now that I'm looking back at this, because when Otis gets there, he steps on the ladder. I'm like, oh, they're doing the fat boy. He can't climb it because he exceeds the weight limit on the ladder. So he's never going to be able to get up the ladder. They telegraphed it right then and there.
I can see where, Asuka can really benefit from this. Asuka was so dominant in NXT and has never had that level of attention paid to her character on the main roster. So this is a great chance to use the briefcase for her for the next couple of months to build her into a threat. What do you think that this does for Otis? I mean, is it going to be played for comedy, or do you think that legitimately, I guess it becomes part of the storyline between he and Mandy, and maybe a heel Ziggler being all upset because he's always overlooked, and here's Otis who literally just catches a briefcase?
That, and maybe at some point there becomes an angle where Ziggler, we have a Ziggler v Otis for the actual Money in the Bank briefcase somewhere down the line. I don't know, but I just think it's still I can't stop.
If you're going to go for, the comedy match, I guess having the comedy character win the comedy match is probably the best way to go. Again, we definitely called it wrong. We thought that whoever would get that wild card would maybe have the best shot, and if not that person, depending on who that was, it was probably going to be Aleister Black, as he stood to gain the most from being the ladder match winner. I truly think that Asuka is going to have a character enhancement, a rebuild time for her as Miss Money in the Bank. I think that for Otis, it'll be a prop that'll be used in the comedy that we have going on.
Yeah, it will definitely going forward be a prop for Otis.
So, I mean, overall, I would say, unless you're just curious as to what in the world, because I think a lot of us thought, what in the world is it that they are going to do with this whole fighting through the headquarter building? For curiosity seekers, definitely check it out. For those who missed the pay-per-view and are wondering, is it worth my time? No titles changed. Nothing overly eventful happened. There were no standout performances, but Doug was very entertained. So maybe go check out the main event, and you'll find it as entertaining as Doug did. I can't say that it was ever boring. So, there's that part of it. And at a brisk 2 hours and 20 whatever minutes, I'm fine for giving that little bit of time to WWE as opposed to 4 or 5 hour overlong pay-per-views. But I have to say more thumbs down than thumbs up.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out what I just watched. I don't know. I don't know if it was good, if it was bad, if it was just Plan 9 so bad it became good again. It was entertaining, and I'm just gonna leave it at that.
So Doug was entertained. I wasn't bored, but these are not exactly ringing endorsements of the pay per view itself. I personally am ready for the end of the cinematic era of wrestling. I'm kind of already like, okay, I understand that traditional matches without an audience are harder to hold folks' attention, but there's reason that we're fans for so long, and that's the product that we grew up on in all of its varieties. But this flavor of it, where you're trying to evoke comedy, and it might be a necessity, but after a while, it just I just want to see a straight up wrestling match. But maybe next month. I mean, we're 4 or 5 weeks away from the next pay per view, and there's a very good chance, even though, like you said, it's good that they didn't yet start bringing in fans. 5 weeks from now, we might be looking at a different scenario. But tonight was the second pay per view that WWE has put on without an audience. And unlike WrestleMania, which actually did have some standout matches, some moments that we also thought might make some highlight reels through the years, some things that we could, put our fingers on as great performances. Like you, I think that for the most part, it was TV quality matches instead of pay-per-view quality matches. And then a main event, which kind of defies whatever explanation we've done tonight, does not do justice to what actually it was. So again, curiosity seekers, if you watch anything, watch the last 40 minutes just to see, if you can figure out what it is that they presented as a main event, and maybe you could tell us, because
Right.
it wasn't a wrestling match.
It was not a risk. I don't know. And sometimes some effort wasn't even made for it to look consistent with like those hard cuts to like Stephanie McMahon in the Money in the Bank conference room where she clearly wasn't there at the same time.
I mean, it definitely was played up as not a sports contest. It was played up for comedy. It was cinematic in that hard cuts. They didn't try to pretend that they were following the participants through the building or anything. It was just cut scene to cut scene, sight gags. It was, again, to me, hot garbage. I can't say that it was boring and that I didn't laugh a few times, but that's not what I want to see in my pay-per-view main event. So please let's pause and remember the great careers of Rey Mysterio and Aleister Black, who gave their lives by being thrown off of skyscrapers this evening. But gosh, let's get to a standard main event next month, even if it's in front of 10 people. That would be great.
Again, WWE does not do any favors with not having anybody out in the audience other than their announce team. That is something that AEW does very, very well with just putting talent, heels on one side, faces on the other, and having some people react to what's going on in the ring. I don't know if WWE's hesitant to do that now because AEW has done it first, and they'll be called out for it. But whatever. But all these matches, except for the main event, whatever it was, could have benefited by at least some people out of ringside. But we'll see where wrestling goes from here. But
where we go from here is back to our normal time. So
yes.
Next week we'll be back to our standard format show, and we'll be back live at 8:00. And next week we're going to preview the upcoming AEW pay-per-view, which will be the first that they do in this era of professional wrestling. And they have the advantage of watching the competition go that route a couple times. So they watched tonight, I'm sure, down in Jacksonville. They watched exactly the show we did, and I'm sure they have some very strong opinions and thoughts on it as well. So let's see how they react and what they do without an audience for their pay-per-view coming up later on in May. And that's what we're going to talk about next week, Doug.
Yes, it is. So I've been Doug.
And as far as I can tell, I'm still Kevin, but I'm not sure of anything after this evening.
So we talked about some wrestling adjacent thing that we just watched. So we'll see you back next week, everybody. Thanks for hanging out.
Happy Mother's Day, mothers out there.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.